Hello. It's time for another Gita video. Always have a backup lighter. So, if you'll remember in the last video, we were looking at chapter 4, verses 24 and 25. And at the end of it, in 25, it says, some worship the spirits through ritual, but mystics worship perfectly through the fire of Brahma, thus making sacrifice of sacrifice. Because Krishna was referring to how Brahma exists in the sacrifice that you offer, in the fire that the sacrifice is offered into, in the person making the sacrifice, so that in all things Brahma is present, and it's a sacrifice of Brahma to Brahma to Brahma. Right? Brahma is the highest concept of deity, of God as a divine force. So in the next few lines, which we're going to look at, today we're going to look at verses 26 to 29, Krishna details other techniques that are part of the same sort of concepts of sacrifice. But he started with, the highest version of it. In verse 25, he says, mystics worship perfectly through the fire of Brahma, making sacrifice of sacrifice. And so this is a technique, and that's the technique that ultimately will get elaborated throughout the rest of the Gita. But here he's going to talk about some of the other spiritual techniques that he considers to certain degrees fruitful. So he says, others practice restraint of the senses, offering their senses like hearing to the fire. But others offer the sound that is heard by the senses to the fire. Also, others control the actions of the senses and the breath. But others practice the focusing of their soul to union. They offer their urge for awareness in the fire of sacrifice. Others sacrifice their possessions, their comforts, in the vows of the eightfold discipline. Others take the strict vow of sacrifice in wisdom, in the advancement of awareness. Others offer the ingoing or outgoing breath, or stopping the movement of the ingoing to the outgoing breath. Others are drawn to the trance of stopping all breath, or giving up food, and offering the ingoing breath as sacrifice to the outgoing. So these are all different methods that are detailed in these 4 verses that are, in essence, he's going through pretty much all of the methods of yoga. The first, restraining the senses, right? So restraining the senses is the practice of yoga where you shut down all attention to the outside world. You stay perfectly still. You close your eyes. You're not listening to what's outside. You're not smelling, tasting, touching anything. You're going completely within yourself, right? And so he's describing this sense of yoga as the sacrificing of the senses to the fire of Brahma, right? And then he says, but others offer the sound that is heard by the senses to the fire. So this is the opposite tack. This is Tantra yoga, where instead of shutting in, you go out and you have intentional experience. So you're hearing the sound, you're seeing the thing, you're interacting with the world and making that interaction your sacrifice to the fire of Brahma. That is to say, you're looking at everything, experiencing all of these sensory experiences as a direct communication of Brahma and something that you're offering up to him, like you're acting as the intermediary. Others control the actions of the senses and the breath. So this is where you're manipulating your senses, you're controlling your breathing. These are the practices of yogic pranayama and of visualization. And others practice the focusing of their soul to union. So this is where you are dedicating yourself through some mental exercise, be it intense concentration or the repetition of mantra, to unite yourself to union with a divine force, right? So this is where you're chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, or whatever other variant of the mantra, and visualizing, concentrating on the image of the deity and things like that, right? They offer their urge for awareness into the fire of sacrifice. So the key in that practice is that you're giving the very desire that you have to be conscious, to be in that state, into that, dissolving yourself into the ecstasy, into the totality of the divine. Others sacrifice their possessions, their comforts, and the vows of the Eightfold Discipline. So this is about rigorous self-denial, right? You're engaging in a practice where you abstain from intoxicants, you abstain from meat, you abstain from sex, you abstain from possessing objects, from dealing with money, you go with the begging bowl, you're doing the whole ascetic thing. And then he says, others take the strict vow of sacrifice in wisdom, in the advancement of awareness. So he's talking about this, that there's the side that is giving up their material possessions and comforts, but then there's the other side that understands to give up in wisdom their attachment to those possessions and comforts. And so there's the anti-materialists, and there's the ones that overcome materialism. And then he says, others offer the ingoing and the outgoing breath, right? This is what you could call the vipassana, right? Where you're concentrating the breathing in and the breathing out of the breath. You're just watching the breath as it goes in and out, and dedicating yourself to consciousness as you do it. Or stopping the movement of the ingoing to the outgoing breath. So again, pranayama is a breath control method where you're restricting your breathing in order to achieve a different state, right? So others have the trance of stopping all breath, right? Of engaging in control of breathing to restrict as much as possible your breath, or giving up food, or offering the ingoing breath as a sacrifice to the outgoing, where you're associating one pattern of breathing with a taking in of divine force, or of a giving out of divine force, or of a giving up of yourself into a divine force. So these are all the different ways that there are to practice what Krishna would define as yoga, which we have to understand again is not like doing stretching. It's not necessarily what most would associate as yoga today, but what he calls yoga means union, and he's talking about techniques of union. These are different ways that people in Krishna's own time were attempting to engage in the experience of divine union. And he'll go on to say, as you'll see later on, that these are all different degrees of legitimate practices, right? They're all things you can do. And the thing about all of these practices is that you can do them right or you can screw them up, any of them. So there's a good way to do them and a bad way to do them. And a lot of people are going to do them wrong, and some people are going to do them right. And so they all have their challenges. And Krishna goes on to propose another kind of way of going about things that he thinks was the best way in his place and time, and that was his recommendation, which was to kind of transcend all of this concept of method. But that's a subject for a future video. For now, feel free to look more into some of these methods and try them out. In fact, that's what Krishna will recommend in the very next few verses. He says, take a look at all of this, see it all and understand it, and then see how you can work with it or build from it. So that's all for today. If you like the video, please Please subscribe and check out the rest of the playlist of the Bhagavad Gita videos, and also check out the playlist of the Yi Fa Society on this channel, where you're going to see material about my style of teaching and information, if you're interested, in how you can join that style of teaching. Thank you very much.